So as you can see, I've already got the car taken apart. I kind of figured, you know, we don't need to have a bunch of time lapses of getting this thing apart. We need to get to the meat and potatoes of the whole operation, which is going to be getting the suspension in the car. So last video, we took all the suspension and stuff out of the Mustang. Well, I got it up under the car already. So it's a pretty close fit if you look under here. I mean, as far as the front goes, the only thing that I have to be really concerned about is the placement of the struts. I have to make sure that that caster, both inwards and back, is fairly close to the Mustang. So if you look over there, you'll see that I've already got the whole front end from the Mustang, just in case I needed it, mainly for reference, because I don't really want to use the real thin sheet metal to graft it into here. But we're not even going to worry about this yet because we need to get to the back of the car. So the important thing about the back of the car is going to be that we need to get this in the absolute correct position, because that's what I'm going to use to base my whole wheelbase off of. So I think the Grand Prix is like 111 inches or 110, whatever it is. I'm going to measure off the back to the front to get the front in the right position, and then I can decide what to do about the strut towers. So overall, the back of the car is really, really close. It just so happens to be that the frame rails of the Mustang versus this Grand Prix, I think it was 40 inches from center to center for the bolts. It's right there. I mean, it's super close. So we just got to do a few modifications as far as that goes, and then it shouldn't be too bad. The very first thing we need to do is get this edge out of here and then actually take off the plate that is right there. See that? This interferes with the front of the subframe where the upper control arm is. So we just need to get this out of the way and then cut the spare wheel well out and then get the other piece on the other side out of the way, and then we can get this thing into position. Okay, so in the trunk, I am basically just going to add in like some extra 1/8 inch thick steel to the top part of this. So I don't know if you can get in real close to this, but you can see these little spot welds here and here. So I think they're somewhere around 4 inches apart. I measured 3.5 inches because I want the meat of the metal to help me out. So they join right here. This is a spot weld, this is a spot weld, this is a spot weld, okay? I don't want to be on the outside of these. I want to be on the inside of these. So the 3.5 inch piece should get me right along this edge to where I'm just about going to be welding right over top of the spot welds. So that's going to help strengthen up the top of this, and then the same thing up here where I've got a spot weld here, and then my other one's up somewhere right about here. So once again, I have to go in between these two going across. So we're going to have one plate this way, one plate this way, one plate that way, and then I'm going to be adding in another piece on the back side of this, right directly behind where the shock's going to mount. Seems a little complicated, but it's really not. If you're following me, you'll kind of be able to visualize it. But overall, that should help with the structure. These are going to go into those frame rails to help keep it from smashing whenever I put the bolt in there to mount the subframe. Now that I have my marks in place, I should be good to go ahead and get the cradle back over here and try to mock it up to that line to see how well it sits in the actual wheel well itself. It kind of sucks that this hole's right here because remember I have to drill through that to get another hole for that piece to go in there. So that's going to be really close, might be kind of a pain in the butt. But I took my big square, went straight across, and it lines right up, which it should, because it's off of, you know, this hole up to here, and then from here back to here. So this is the center line of that rear end, and then this is where that hole would be. So we're going to go ahead and get that under here and see how it fits. Now that I've got it in position and got the wheel on it, it looks like it's sitting too far back. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is, I think I'm gonna line it up with those holes that are in there already and just kind of see how it looks. But that's definitely way too far back. You can see there's a huge gap up here, a little bit of one here, so we need to get it closer to the center. There's other ways I can go about doing this, but we're kind of just messing around. So let's just see if we can get this closer into position just off those other holes. If those other holes that are already there line this right up, that's going to be incredible. So I got to tell you, I am almost in disbelief by the fact that this just did this. So the holes that we just were talking about that were going to be kind of a pain in the butt because they're in the way, that is literally the holes that the back subframe mounts have to line up to. Literally already there. I mean, I just can't even believe that. So check this out, and this is just awesome. So really, the center of the Pontiac emblem there is roughly the center of, you know, everything, right? So this whole opening from right about here over to here, and sorry about the light shining through, but that's about 30 inches, okay? So if we touch right here, it's just right at about 30 inches, okay? You're just gonna have to believe me. Now, when I measure from there to the center of the wheel, just kind of go a little bit out of it there. It's right at that 15-inch mark. See that? Okay? And we're pretty close. Now, remember, we have that little bit of adjustment in these because of how big those holes are. So what that means is if we just work off the holes that are already in the body of the car, this will be in position. I mean, you're talking about a 99 Pontiac Grand Prix putting a 2017 Mustang subframe in, and there are holes literally already in position. It doesn't get much better than that, I'm telling you. So the only other issue that we have is, so where that upper control arm is, it's actually hitting that cross beam that goes under there. So I'm gonna have to cut that out or notch it out to clear that control arm, which kind of sucks because that's gonna have to change the layout of the way that we were gonna do the inside of the trunk. So now that we know that the subframe lines right up with those holes, which once again is still crazy to me, we're gonna go ahead and start making the plates to actually mount that thing in there. It's a little bit kind of towards the back, just a touch, but I'm pretty sure that Grand Prix are kind of like that anyways. So I think we're gonna move it forward by just a smidge when we actually put the pieces in there, but I'm gonna go ahead and get to work on those. So I whipped these pieces up real quick. The idea here is that this is going to be the bottom side. So basically this is going to go through the frame rail to connect to the top plates that we put on there. So I need to actually enlarge the holes on the body a little bit for these to slide up into. And then I did set them inward a little bit more than what the car is, because I was having kind of a tight fit going straight through those holes with the bolts. So hopefully that'll kind of help that out, because once again, we do have a lot of wiggle room in that bushing. So I also went 2 inches, which is the width of the frame rail here. And this is kind of right past where the center line of the axle shaft is. So that way I had a little bit more meat right here for where the spring mount actually goes on the bottom side. So it'll go somewhere in this area. But let me get these holes figured out, and then we'll get one of these up in there. And then I think we're just gonna tack it all together for now. And then eventually we're gonna have to box in the sides on the bottom, and then there'll be that top plate once again from the trunk. So let's get this checked out and see what it looks like. Well, now we have some solid, good mounting points for that subframe. So what I did was I just drilled some holes into where the original subframe mounted to, and then used all of that as my positioning. So this is all made symmetrical from side to side, putting these holes back into this position, using that original hole that we found as a reference, but I went slightly in front of it. So, because we have a lot of room. I've mentioned that numerous times, but just to kind of put that into perspective, we are able to move that much from side to side and back and forth. So it shouldn't be hard to get that thing into position. So what we'll have to do is we'll do a little bit of work back here to get this to sit flat up against that. As far as all this goes, this is just for structure, so this can have that little bit of a gap. We'll just fill it in with some weld, get it all nice and solid across that frame rail. And then by the time this is all said and done, this is going to have another plate that goes on this side, and then also on the inside there's going to be some structure made. But other than that, the spring perch part has to go on here, but this is going to get in the way, so this is only temporary until we weld this. And I'll probably just leave that one in for safe measure unless the upper control arm hits it. So either way, I'm going to get this thing back up onto these and then recheck our wheel position and see how everything looks. And there it is. I've got a jack actually bringing it up to try to get the suspension kind of up a little bit so we can really see where it's going to sit. But it's going to be kind of tough once again. But if we go from here to about the center of the wheel, roughly, we're at about 15 inches. And it's nice that the Pontiac Emerald has that nice little point you can use, you know, for rough measurements. So then if we go from the back to right about there, we'll see that this is kind of moving a little bit, but it's right about 15 inches. So we do have a little bit of adjustability. They're actually all the way back right now, so we just cut it as far as getting the right amount of movement to be able to move it towards the back, because when I first got it in there, it was a little bit too far forward. I just undid the bolts, slid it back, and there it sits. Now if we look up in there, we can see our plate up there, and then we actually have our bolt in the mount there with the washer from the Mustang, and you can see that it's kind of towards the front there because of having to adjust it. So from up top, you can see that we have our pieces sticking through right here. Got the bolt going through it. Unfortunately, it doesn't stick up very far, so that kind of sucks for what I originally planned on doing. I thought they were going to be long enough, but I was going to have the other plate go over top of it, obviously, and then kind of just weld around that to solidify it, but we'll figure it out. I'll probably be able to just maybe put a plate immediately on here and then stack another one on top of it. Something. We'll figure that part out. But that is really exciting, because now we just need to move on to building some sort of box or mount that comes off the frame rail there for the front mounts. Now what I did to fix that gap back there was pretty simple. It was just because of my weld that I put on that little piece of round stock there. So now we have a nice good flat line across here because I went ahead and so I cut the hole out some more, and then I have these pieces of wood on the inside to be able to kind of bolt that all together and pull that piece up against the body. So at this point, I have to go in here and get all this cleaned up. I cleaned it up a little bit, but not enough. So I'll just hit it with a wire wheel and get it nice and clean to be able to weld. Probably gonna have to go ahead and trim this up a bit more, so that way I can have access back in there. And then as far as this gap goes up here, I'm not really super concerned about that. I mean, I should be able to fill that in with some weld pretty well, but we're gonna see. Okay, now that we have that up in there, we need to get the thing leveled to the body. So I'm gonna work off of the assumption, and this is probably wrong, but I'm gonna do it anyways. I'm gonna work off the assumption that down here, this is my point to level the car. So obviously the reason that I'm doing this is I am on a uneven concrete floor with mismatched jack stands, and I need to make sure that I get that rear end pretty close to this. Now, luckily with the way that this is set up, being independent rear suspension with a cradle like that, I'll be able to make little adjustments. So I'm probably actually gonna go just a little bit high, so that way I can shim it. I don't know about that yet. We're just gonna see how this turns out by doing it this way. So the way that I'm gonna do it is, I'm gonna look right there. This isn't really the precise way of doing it, but I thought it'd work. So I'm looking at that bubble, and it's just a little bit past the front line there. Now I want to try to get that to where that bubble is just right past the front line, just like the other one. Get it flat on the bottom of that, nice and solid. I'll see that my bubble is just right in front of that line. You guys definitely can't see that, but it is just right at the front of the line. And that's lining up, once again, with how that one is. Okay. So I think that's where we're going to stick that. I'm going to go ahead and start making the templates for the pieces that are going to go here. So it's going to come off of the bottom right here and come over, and then it's going to kind of attach to the side here. You'll see what I mean once I make it. So I basically just have to make a template for the one side and then just flip it, and I'll have the other side. So let me get to work on that. Awesome. I mean, just awesome. Check this out. So we got our piece just welded up in here. And then this is actually the piece from the Mustang that I was talking about earlier. And look where it lands. It goes just about perfectly to the spot for the original, lower control arms or whatever. That's just insane how nicely that all lines up. So that's really great. It looks pretty cool. So let me go ahead and get the other side in real fast, and then we are going to step back and check this thing out hanging in the car without that jack. Okay, I'm relieved to say that I am done for the night, and this is absolutely awesome. So we're gonna end this video here because I think this is a good stopping point. Next video, we will focus on getting the spring perches in and getting the shock mounts in there. And then we'll have to move on to boxing this stuff in just a little bit more. And we have to make mounting points for those other brackets. There is plenty to do. So let's look at this final result and just bask in the glory of how easily this rear suspension goes into a 99 Grand Prix from a 2017 Mustang. That's just absolutely awesome. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed checking this out. If you like what I got going on, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.